Brother Jorge, who came along with me this morning, got one of those great readings that lectors always love. Nebuchadnezzar shows up about 4 times in the reading, and Nebuzaradan shows up, and some other unpronounceable names. So it's always a great joy to hear those readings done and to hear them done well. So good job, Brother Jorge. But of course, that reading is one of the most dark moments in the history of Israel. Things go from bad to worse. And just when things are at their worst, they get much worse and worse. Until finally, everything is lost. The people are taken off into captivity. The king is disgraced, humiliated. His sons are put to death. And all that's left is a small remnant in the land. Just a few are left to tend the vines, kind of keep the lights on and maintain things at a very minimal level. But everyone who matters, everyone who counts, and all of the life and vitality of the city of Jerusalem, the city of God, it's gone. And then from that place of the darkest depth, this time of exile that begins in that first reading that we heard, people could be tempted to just let go of all of their hopes, to forget that there ever were good times. How interesting then that psalm that we heard, this psalm of God's people in their captivity. Let my tongue be silenced if I ever forget you. In those times of great darkness and distress, we might just accept things as they are and say, you know what? Here's our new normal. Maybe what we remembered, what we used to live, when we could feel God's presence close to us and when we could see all of that, maybe that was just a fantasy. Maybe that was the mirage. And what we're living now is the reality. Let's just get used to it and in a way lower our expectations. Not so much lower our expectations for ourselves, but let's lower our expectation about God. Let my tongue be silenced if I ever forget you. How important it is to remember what God has done, so that we don't measure our lives by the least common denominator. And we don't measure God by what we settle for. Because God never settles for things. Imagine if God had done that with us in the garden. He created a garden of paradise, placed us, our first parents, in the midst of it, and He gave everything to them, and they messed it up. Imagine if God had just said, well, I'm done with you. I'll just accept how far you've fallen. I'll leave you there, and that's it. But God didn't forget what He made us for. God didn't forget what He had created us for. And in His goodness, God sent His Son ultimately into our broken, fallen world. God didn't ignore all that happened, but God remembered what we were made for. And He sent His Son to recall, but also to restore and to transform and elevate us. I think in today's gospel, after the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus has preached this marvelous discourse to all the people from the mountain, and as He comes down, what happens? This one leper approaches Him and has the courage to say, Lord, I still believe that my life matters to you, but I still believe that it's in your hands. If you wish, you can make me clean. I know you have that power. I remember, I've heard what you said to the crowds, but Lord, what you've said to all of them also touches my heart personally right where I am. And Lord, I bring myself to you, I bring my heart to you, and I place it before you. And how does Jesus respond? I do will it. Be made clean. I see your infirmity, I see your need, I see where you are. And I come to you, not just as part of the crowd, but I come to you personally, individually. And you don't have to go and tell everyone about it. Just go to the priests and give the offering that Moses prescribed. That will be a proof for them. Because maybe the priests had forgotten. Maybe the priests themselves had settled for much less. But God doesn't settle for less. God is the one who remembers what He made us for. God is the one who sees us even in our darkest moments of distress. And God is the one who, through Christ, comes to lift us up and make God's will known personally, individually, concretely in our lives. Lord, if you wish, you can change this. You can heal me. You can make me clean. I do will it. Be made clean. As we continue with this Eucharist, you might ask for that grace. To be mindful of God's goodness, of God's plan for us. Maybe you're in a time where things are looking a little better for you. Things are looking good, and it's easy to experience God's goodness. Or maybe you feel like you're in a time where things are going from bad to worse. And just as bad as things get, well, they can get a little worse, and you can be tempted to just say, well, this is the new normal, let's just all accept it, it's never going to change, nothing will ever come back. Maybe the Lord wants to speak to your heart today. This word, don't forget what I've made you for. Don't measure yourself, don't measure the world, and don't measure God by how far we've fallen, but measure God by how far He raises us up, how close He comes to us in our need. Lord, if you wish, you can come to me right now. I do wish to do so. I do come to you. And I pour out in my Son, says the Father to us, I pour out my love. And Jesus shows us that will of the Father. I do will it, be made clean. Let's pray for anyone who has maybe forgotten that their hearts might be opened again, that hope might be reignited. And let's pray for one another that each of us experiences that personal presence of Christ coming to us right where we are to remind us, to recall God's plan for us, to restore us, to lift us up, and to transform us through this sacrifice of love, this Holy Eucharist that we now celebrate.